The genesis of my marital apocalypse began not with a bang, but with the quiet, determined whir of a high-end treadmill. I remember the exact morning. The coffee was brewing, casting a warm, familiar scent through the kitchen as sunlight, thin and hopeful, sliced through the blinds. It was a Tuesday, indistinguishable from any other, until Sarah waltzed in, her face aglow with an almost evangelical fervor. "I did it," she announced, her voice buzzing with an energy that felt foreign at 7 a.m. I joined the summit. The summit was the kind of gym that didn't just promise fitness, it promised a lifestyle. It was an exclusive, glass-walled temple of self-improvement downtown, complete with celebrity trainers, cryotherapy chambers, and a juice bar where a single smoothie cost more than our weekly groceries. "That's great, honey," I said, genuinely happy for her. "I'm proud of you." And I was. Sarah had been feeling adrift, caught in the quiet doldrums of a life that, from the outside, looked perfect. We had a comfortable home, a stable marriage of 5 years, and a rhythm that was both reassuring and, I suppose, predictable. If a new gym could give her a spark, who was I to stand in the way? I even took on more of the household chores, the laundry, the cooking, to free up her evenings for her new passion. I thought of it as a down payment on her happiness. At the time, I didn't realize I was actually funding the construction of a battering ram, aimed squarely at the life we had built. The initial weeks were a whirlwind of infectious enthusiasm. Sarah was energetic, optimistic, and relentlessly focused. Our fridge, once a haven of comfort food and leftover pizza, became a shrine to a new, greener god. It was stocked with Tupperware containers filled with kale, quinoa, and a pantheon of protein powders whose names I couldn't pronounce. Our usual Friday night tradition of takeout and a movie devolved into lengthy discussions about macronutrients and the perils of gluten. I went along with it, of course. I even joked about her green sludge smoothies, telling her they looked like a swamp monster had sneezed into her blender. The jokes, once a cornerstone of our dynamic, didn't land anymore. Sarah was too focused, too intense. Her gaze seemed to be fixed on a distant horizon, one I couldn't see. It wasn't about us anymore. It was about her. Then came the mirror phase. Our home, once a shared space, transformed into her personal photography studio. Every reflective surface became a stage for her to document her progress. It wasn't just about flexing a bicep. It was about perfecting every variable, the lighting, the angle, the carefully curated casualness of her expression. I'll never forget the afternoon she spent 2 hours, 2 full hours, attempting to capture the perfect post-workout selfie for her burgeoning Instagram following. "It's about authenticity, Mark," she'd explained, her brow furrowed in concentration. I shrugged it off. She's proud of her progress, I told myself. Let her have her moment. But those moments turned into hours, and those hours bled into entire weekends, where her focus was tethered to the glow of her phone, to the endless stream of validation from her new online tribe. One Friday night, I suggested we watch a movie, a simple, nostalgic gesture. "Like we used to," I'd added, a hint of hope in my voice. She scoffed, not even looking up from her phone. "Mark, I don't have time to just sit around. I have goals to crush." I laughed nervously, waiting for the punchline. But there was none. Her face was a mask of cold resolve. That's when I realized something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about fitness anymore. It was about proving something, though I still couldn't figure out what, or to whom. The real turning point, the moment the first hairline crack appeared in our foundation, came one morning while I was nursing my coffee, still groggy from a restless night. Sarah walked in, a warrior in neon pink workout gear, her eyes blazing with a self-righteous fire. Out of nowhere, she made her proclamation. "I deserve more in life." I thought she was talking about a promotion at work, or perhaps some grand, unarticulated dream. I was about to ask what she meant when she dropped the bomb. "This marriage is holding me back, Mark. I'm filing for divorce." I laughed. It was an involuntary, incredulous sound. I was waiting for the gotcha, the playful punch on the arm. But her face was stone. No humor, no hesitation. Just cold, hard determination. I asked her what she meant, what she was talking about, and her response hit me like a freight train. "I've outgrown this," she said, gesturing vaguely around the kitchen, her hand dismissing our life as if it were an outdated piece of furniture. "This house. This routine. This, you." I couldn't believe it. After 5 years together, 3 of them married, this is where we ended up. I was just a phase she'd outgrown, a stepping stone on her path to, what, exactly? Some Instagram famous lifestyle where kale and compliments replace the messy, beautiful reality of a shared life? That morning marked the beginning of the end. Or maybe it was the beginning of something else entirely. I didn't know it then, but her words, "I deserve more," would echo in my mind long after she walked out the door with her gym bag, leaving a half-empty smoothie glass on the counter. It sat there for hours, a perfect, green metaphor for the emptiness she had left behind. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, trying to make sense of the wreckage. How did we get here? Where did it all go wrong? But no amount of reflection could prepare me for what was coming next. Sarah was just getting started, and I was about to find out how far she was willing to go to chase this new, sculpted version of herself. That was the first crack in the life we'd built together. And let me tell you, the cracks only got wider. After that bombshell morning, everything about Sarah changed. It wasn't just the way she looked at me, as if I were some relic from a past life she was eager to forget. It was her entire demeanor. She moved through the house with an air of cool detachment, like a guest in a hotel, already mentally packing her bags and checking out of our marriage. I was still reeling from the explosion, and she was already surveying the blast zone for salvageable assets. The Sarah I married, the woman who laughed at my bad jokes and held my hand during scary movies, was gone. In her place was a stranger, a perfectly toned, emotionally vacant doppelganger. At first, I clung to the hope that this was a phase, a temporary madness. A midlife crisis, perhaps, arriving a decade ahead of schedule. People go through things, right? They question, they pivot, they evolve. I gave her space, a wide berth of it, hoping she'd navigate her way back to the woman I knew, back to us. But the space I gave her didn't bring her closer, it just gave her more room to drift away. It wasn't long before her new routine solidified. The late nights at the gym became a regular occurrence. Just one more class, she'd text, her tone flat and devoid of the warmth that used to make me feel like I mattered. Sometimes she'd throw in, grabbing a bite with some friends, as if that were a plausible addendum to a workout that ended at 10 p.m. But I wasn't stupid. The gym doesn't serve cocktails until midnight, and friendships built on squat racks don't blossom into late-night dinner dates overnight. Something was up. Her phone became an extension of her body, a third hand she couldn't function without. It was always with her, always buzzing with the phantom limb of a notification. She'd scroll through Instagram with a religious devotion, her face illuminated by the cold, blue light. A small, satisfied smile playing on her lips every time another like or comment rolled in. "You're glowing. Such an inspiration. Living your best life, Queen." The compliments poured in, a digital fire hose of validation fueling her ego. Meanwhile, I was sitting on the couch 2 feet away, completely invisible. One night, consumed by a morbid curiosity, I decided to scroll through my own social media feed. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just a mindless distraction from the growing silence in my own home. That's when I noticed it. Every picture of us was gone. Our wedding photos, our anniversary posts, our vacation snaps from that trip to Italy, all erased. It was as if I'd been digitally excommunicated, deleted from the official record of her life. Her page was now a carefully curated shrine to her new self. Gym selfies, workout videos, and captions dripping with a hollow, self-congratulatory empowerment. New chapter. Who dis? Redefining me. Unapologetically chasing my own happiness. It felt like a slap in the face. She didn't even have the decency to tell me she was rewriting our history. It was as if our marriage had been nothing more than a placeholder. Before a picture she could conveniently crop out when it no longer fit her new, improved image. And the likes and comments, they were proof that she had an audience, a cheering section completely unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, about the destruction she was leaving in her wake. Then came the overheard phone call. I wasn't eavesdropping, I swear. I was getting ready for work in the bathroom, and she was in the kitchen, her voice a sickly sweet melody she only used when she wanted something. "I just feel so free now," she said, pausing to let out a tinkling, artificial giggle. "He doesn't even get it. He's stuck in the past. He's like an anchor." That was the moment it all clicked into place. Sarah wasn't just leaving me. She was shedding me like old skin. In her eyes, I was the comfortable, predictable past, the anchor holding her back from her glorious, best life future. She was free now, or at least that's what she wanted to believe. But free to do what? Chase likes? Reinvent herself as some kind of Instagram fitness guru? It all felt so hollow, so tragically superficial. The worst part? I wasn't even angry yet. Not really. I was hurt, confused, blindsided. I had supported her through this whole fitness journey. I'd taken on extra chores, cooked her bland, joyless meals, and even feigned interest in her endless monologues about the benefits of intermittent fasting. And this was my reward? To be discarded like a pair of old, worn-out running shoes. But here's the thing about being blindsided. Once you get over the initial shock, once you peel yourself off the pavement, something shifts. That hurt, it starts to harden. The confusion, it gets replaced by a cold, hard clarity. And the sadness? Well, that turns into something else entirely. Resolve. Sarah thought she had me figured out. She thought I was the nice guy, the one who would roll over, sign the divorce papers, and let her walk away with a smile and half of our assets. But she underestimated me. She underestimated the man she had spent 5 years with. If she wanted out, fine. But she wasn't going to steamroll me in the process. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The cracks in our marriage had become a full-blown chasm, and Sarah was already building her bridge to the other side. But what she didn't realize was that I was already laying the groundwork to ensure she wouldn't get there unscathed. If she wanted a fight, she was about to get one. And I was just getting started. It didn't take long for Sarah's newfound confidence to curdle into something uglier, something brittle and arrogant. At first, it was subtle. The late nights, the endless gym selfies, the smug way she'd strut around the house like she was the star of a show only she could see. But as the weeks bled into one another, it became clear she wasn't just building a new identity, she was constructing a fantasy. And fantasies, as I was about to learn, have a way of crumbling under the harsh glare of reality. Her relationship with Leo, the personal trainer, went from whispered rumors among our mutual friends to a blatant, in-your-face spectacle. The guy was a caricature of a fitness influencer, perfectly tanned, perpetually in a tank top, and about as deep as a puddle. I caught onto their connection pretty quickly. She didn't even try to hide it. One evening, she came home glowing, her face lit up like a Christmas tree. "Leo says I'm the strongest I've ever been," she announced to the empty room, not even glancing in my direction. Strongest? Huh. Asterisk, I wanted to ask if he was referring to her deadlifts or her remarkable ability to pretend she wasn't actively wrecking our marriage. But I bit my tongue. I was playing the long game. Soon, Leo's name started slipping into every casual conversation. Leo recommended this new protein powder. Leo's taking me to this new vegan place this weekend. Leo said I should try hot yoga. It was like she was name-dropping him to get a reaction out of me. And yeah, it worked. It pissed me off. But more than that, it made me see her for who she'd become. Someone so desperate for validation that she'd accept it from a guy whose main talent was flexing in front of a mirror. Then the sightings started. Friends, the loyal ones who still spoke to me, would text me with a hesitant, apologetic tone. "Hey, man, isn't Sarah still, you know?" Because I just saw her holding hands with some gym bro at the smoothie bar. At first, I didn't believe it. But then I saw the pictures, tagged on a friend of a friend's Instagram story. Sarah and Leo, laughing, touching, acting like they were the power couple of the year. The first time I confronted her about it, she didn't even flinch. She just looked at me with this detached, almost bored expression, like I was some annoying fly buzzing around her perfect new life. "Just so you know," she said, her tone infuriatingly casual, "Leo and I are dating now. I think it's time you accept that." Accept it? Oh, I accepted it, all right. I accepted that my wife had transformed into someone I didn't recognize, someone who thought she could detonate our life, flaunt her affair, and still come out on top. She'd already mentally divorced me, so what did it matter to her if she added a public, humiliating affair to her resume? But here's the kicker. Leo wasn't just some rebound. The guy had a pattern. My lawyer, Alex, a man who took a particular delight in unearthing the skeletons in people's closets, did some digging. He was an absolute legend. He found out that Leo was a professional homewrecker. He'd done this twice before. Find a married woman on the verge of a life change, pump her up with compliments, make her feel invincible, and then ride the wave of her newfound empowerment until it wasn't convenient anymore. Sarah, of course, thought she was different. "Leo's not like other guys," she'd gush to her friends, a line Alex's investigator recorded during one of her girls' night dinners. But I knew better. The guy wasn't in it for love. He was in it for the hustle. And Sarah, with her blossoming diva complex and her complete lack of a long-term plan, was the perfect mark. The cracks in their own relationship started to show soon enough. Leo's over-the-top, performative personality began to clash with Sarah's growing entitlement. I overheard her on the phone one night, her voice sharp with anger. "I deserve better than your baggage, Leo." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here she was, building her new empire with a guy who had less stability than a house of cards. Meanwhile, Sarah's public persona was becoming more and more grandiose. She started dressing like she was auditioning for a reality show. Tight dresses, sky-high heels, makeup caked on like a bad wedding cake. She wasn't just living her truth, she was performing it. And her audience was social media. Every post was another desperate grab for attention. "Living my best life. Hashtag no more holding back." She's not a wife anymore. She's a force of nature. But behind the filters and the carefully crafted captions, I could see the cracks forming in her own foundation. She didn't have a plan. She didn't have a backup. She was banking everything on this fantasy she'd built around her connection with Leo. And when that fantasy started to unravel, so did she. I'll admit, a part of me enjoyed watching it happen. Call it petty, call it schadenfreude. But there's a certain grim satisfaction in seeing someone who tried to destroy you face the consequences of their own foolish actions. Sarah thought she was untouchable. She was about to learn, the hard way, that empires built on lies don't last long. And me? I wasn't just standing by. I was preparing, gathering evidence, working with Alex, and making sure that when the time came, I'd be ready. Sarah thought she had me beat. She had no idea what was coming. Court day. I woke up that morning with a strange cocktail of nerves and steely determination. This wasn't just about splitting assets or arguing over who got the good set of towels. This was about the truth, the unvarnished, undeniable, and deeply satisfying truth about Sarah and everything she'd done to dismantle our marriage while parading herself as some kind of empowered victim. When I arrived at the courthouse with Alex, my lawyer, he was carrying a binder so thick it could have doubled as a doorstop. He'd been working tirelessly for weeks, compiling a mountain of evidence that left no room for misinterpretation. Across the room, Sarah sat with her lawyer, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She was visibly tense. The diva strut was gone. There were no designer blazers, no smug grins. Just a hollow, haunted look, like a queen who had just realized her castle was built on sand. The hearing began with Sarah's lawyer spinning a sob story that could have been ripped straight from a bad Lifetime movie. According to him, Sarah was a long-suffering wife, emotionally drained by my lack of support for her personal growth. They painted her as a victim, a woman who had no choice but to seek happiness elsewhere. I sat there, biting the inside of my cheek, letting them dig their own hole. It was a masterpiece of fiction, and I almost applauded. Then it was Alex's turn. He stood up, adjusted his tie, and began to methodically, surgically, dismantle Sarah's web of lies. He started with the basics, laying out the facts like a master architect. First, he presented evidence that I'd gone above and beyond to support her fitness journey. There were text messages where I offered to make her healthy meals, suggested we do couples fitness classes, and encouraged her to follow her goals. I'd even adjusted my work schedule to handle more chores around the house, so she could have more time to work out. The judge, a woman with a no-nonsense expression, nodded along, her gaze fixed on the documents Alex provided. But it wasn't just about what I'd done. Alex then showed the court what Sarah had been doing behind my back. He read aloud emails and texts where she ridiculed me to her friends, calling me boring, predictable, and deadweight. She had even referred to me as her backup plan in one particularly damning message. Backup plan. Can you imagine hearing that about yourself? About the life you thought you were building with someone? It hit hard, but I kept my composure. I had to. Then Alex dropped the financial bombshell. He presented a detailed forensic accounting report, complete with bank statements, credit card bills, and a clear, undeniable trail of her deception. Luxury spa days, weekend getaways with Leo, designer clothes, and hundreds of dollars spent on dinners I was never invited to, all while I was at home eating leftovers. She wasn't just neglecting our marriage, she was funding her fantasy life at my expense. Sarah's lawyer tried to object, claiming the spending was part of her self-care journey, but the judge wasn't buying it. The real nail in the coffin came when Alex unveiled the journal entry. Sarah, in a moment of hubris, had written down her master plan to leave me, take everything she could in the divorce, and use the settlement money to fund her new, glamorous life with Leo. As the judge read those words aloud, you could feel the air leave the room. Sarah sat there, her face ashen, her polished nails drumming a nervous, frantic rhythm against the table. But Alex wasn't done. He shifted his focus to Leo. Oh, Leo. The judge learned all about his history of manipulating married women, encouraging them to leave their husbands, and then vanishing once the money ran out. Alex even brought in sworn testimony from one of Leo's previous victims, a woman who described, in heartbreaking detail, how he'd used her in the exact same way he was using Sarah. The look on Sarah's face was priceless. For all her talk about being different and special, she was just another mark in Leo's long con. By the time Alex finished, Sarah's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The judge didn't even bother hiding her irritation. She turned to Sarah, her voice cold and sharp. "Mrs. Patterson, your claims lack credibility. The evidence shows a clear pattern of manipulation and financial irresponsibility on your part. This court cannot, and will not, reward such behavior." The ruling was swift and brutal. The house was mine outright. Sarah was ordered to reimburse me for the funds she had drained from our accounts, every last penny. As for her emotional compensation claim, denied completely. The judge even called it baseless and insulting. Alex had prepared me for this moment, but even he looked a little surprised by how decisively we'd won. As we left the courtroom, Sarah trailed behind her lawyer, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She didn't look like the confident, Instagram-famous diva she'd tried to become. She looked like someone who had just realized the cost of her lies was far greater than she'd ever imagined. I walked out with Alex, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. For months, Sarah had made me feel like I was the problem, like I was the one holding her back. But today, the truth came out. And the truth was clear. Sarah wasn't a victim. She was the architect of her own downfall. Justice, they say, is blind. But today, it felt like it had 20/20 vision. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. This wasn't just a win, it was validation. A reminder that I wasn't the one who broke us. That was all Sarah. After the court's ruling, Sarah's life began to unravel with an astonishing, almost poetic, speed. The fallout from her choices hit her like a tidal wave, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Gone was the confident, self-assured woman who had strutted through life as if the world owed her a standing ovation. What remained was a shadow of the person I once knew, someone grasping at the tattered remnants of her carefully curated facade. It started with the house. The judge's decision had been crystal clear. The house was mine. She had 30 days to pack up her things and leave. At first, she tried to stall, claiming she needed more time to figure things out. But I wasn't having it. "You had plenty of time to figure things out while you were busy draining our bank account and parading Leo around," I told her bluntly over the phone. For once, she didn't have a snappy comeback. Over the next few weeks, I watched from a distance as she packed. The designer luggage she used to flaunt as a status symbol now seemed to carry the weight of her mistakes. She moved slowly, almost aimlessly, as if delaying the inevitable. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and regret. But I kept my distance. I wasn't going to make this any easier for her. She'd made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. When moving day finally came, Sarah didn't have the entourage of friends she might have expected. Instead, a single, reluctant-looking friend showed up with an old, beat-up car to help her haul away the last of her belongings. Watching her load those bags into the car, I couldn't help but feel a grim sense of poetic justice. She'd built her empire on lies and manipulation, and now she was driving away from it with nothing but regret in the trunk. But her troubles didn't end there. Without access to my income or the marital funds she'd been siphoning, Sarah was left scrambling to make ends meet. Her Instagram followers, the ones who had once hyped her up with comments like, "You're glowing," and "living your best life," began to dwindle. The truth about her affair with Leo and the court's ruling had started to circulate among our mutual acquaintances. People weren't as eager to rally around her anymore. Desperate for cash, Sarah tried selling off her designer clothes and handbags. At first, it seemed to work. She managed to offload a few items to people who still believed in her living my truth narrative. But it wasn't enough. She began borrowing money from friends, spinning sob stories about how she'd been wronged and was just trying to get back on her feet. Those who initially lent her money grew tired of her antics quickly, especially when they realized she had no intention or ability to pay them back. As for Leo, he disappeared as swiftly as he'd entered her life. It started with missed calls and unanswered texts. Then, one day, she discovered he'd blocked her on all social media. The guy who had been her partner in this delusional new life had moved on to his next target, a younger, flashier client who wasn't tied up in legal battles and financial ruin. Sarah was devastated. She bet everything on him, and he'd left her with nothing. I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel satisfying to watch her crumble. After everything she'd put me through, seeing her face the consequences of her actions felt like justice. But it was also a sobering reminder of how far she'd fallen. This was a woman who once held her head high, who had dreams and ambitions. Now, she was just lost. One night, about 2 weeks after she moved out, Sarah showed up at my doorstep. She looked nothing like the polished, glamorous version of herself she used to project. Her hair was messy, her clothes wrinkled, and her eyes were tired, haunted. "Mark," she said softly, her voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "What do you want, Sarah?" She hesitated, wringing her hands. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I made mistakes, big ones. I let Leo manipulate me. I got caught up in this fantasy, and I ruined everything." Her words sounded rehearsed, but the desperation in her eyes was real. She wasn't here out of genuine remorse. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I replied, my tone calm but firm. "You made your choices. You chose Leo. You tried to take everything from me. Now, you're dealing with the fallout." Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. "Can't we at least be civil? Maybe start over?" "I have nothing, Mark. I'm lost." I stared at her, feeling nothing but a cold, hard resolve. "Sarah, I gave you everything. My support, my trust, my love. And you threw it all away. You don't get to come back now and ask for a second chance. That's not how this works." She broke down, sobbing on my porch. For a moment, I stood there, watching her crumble. Then, without a word, I stepped back inside and closed the door, leaving her to face the reality she created. Sarah had burned every bridge in her life. And now, she was standing alone in the ashes. It was a harsh lesson, but it was one she'd brought upon herself. And me? For the first time in months, I felt free. Truly free. To move on. It was late one evening when Sarah reappeared at my door. I hadn't seen her in weeks, and to be honest, I didn't expect to see her again. After everything she'd done, after all the bridges she'd burned, what could possibly bring her back? But there she was, standing in the dim glow of the porch light, looking as though life had finally caught up with her and beaten her down. "Mark," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She clutched her arms across her chest, not in the confident, defensive way she used to, but in a way that made her seem small, vulnerable. I opened the door, but didn't step aside to let her in. "What do you want, Sarah?" She hesitated, looking down at her feet like a child caught doing something wrong. I need to talk to you. Please." Against my better judgment, I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. I wasn't going to let her back into my home, or my life, without a damn good reason. "Talk," I said, folding my arms. Her eyes welled up with tears almost immediately. "I'm sorry, Mark. For everything. For how I treated you. For what I did to our marriage. I know I've made mistakes, big ones. I don't know what I was thinking." I leaned back against the doorframe, keeping my expression neutral. I wasn't about to make this easy for her. "Oh, you knew exactly what you were thinking, Sarah. You thought you could have it all. Leo, the house, my money. You thought you could walk away and leave me in the dust while you lived your best life. So, forgive me if I'm not exactly moved by your sudden epiphany." Her tears started falling in earnest then, streaking her face and making her look even more disheveled than when she arrived. "I got caught up in something in this fantasy. Leo made me believe I deserved more, that I could have this perfect life. But it wasn't real. None of it was real. He used me." I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Welcome to the club. He used you. You used me. And now you're here. Why, Sarah? What do you want from me?" She wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her sweatshirt, a stark contrast to the designer outfits she used to parade around in. "I don't know where else to go," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I've lost everything. The house, the money, my friends. Even Leo's gone. I'm lost, Mark. I don't know how to fix this." Her admission hung in the air between us. I could feel a part of me softening old habits, maybe. After all, this was the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with. But another part of me, the part that remembered every cruel word, every betrayal, every sleepless night, kept me grounded. "You can't fix this," I said finally, my tone flat. "You can't undo the damage you caused. You made your choices, Sarah. You walked away. You don't get to come back now just because your fantasy fell apart. Her face crumpled, and she sank down onto the porch step, burying her face in her hands. I don't know what to do, she sobbed. I don't know how to start over. I watched her for a moment, feeling nothing but a strange sense of detachment. The woman sitting on my porch wasn't the Sarah I'd married. She wasn't even the Sarah who'd torn through my life like a wrecking ball. She was a hollow shell, a reminder of what happens when you build your life on lies and arrogance. You figure it out, I said finally, the same way I had to figure it out when she left me. You pick yourself up, and you deal with it. But you do it without me. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't flinch. I didn't reach out to comfort her, didn't tell her it was going to be okay. Because it wasn't my job anymore. She'd forfeited that when she walked out the door the first time. After a few minutes, I stepped back toward the door. I think you should go, I said, my voice firm but not unkind. There's nothing for you here anymore, Sarah. I hope you figure it out. But I'm done. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, desperation written all over her features. Mark, please. Can't we at least? No, I cut her off. We can't. Goodbye, Sarah. I stepped back inside and closed the door, leaning against it for a moment as I listened to her sobbing on the other side. Eventually, I heard her footsteps retreat, the sound of her car starting, and then silence. That was the last time I saw her. And as painful as it was to watch someone I once loved fall apart, I knew I'd made the right choice. Sarah had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it, alone. After Sarah left that night, I sat in the quiet of my house, the same house that had once echoed with arguments, laughter, and the occasional hum of her blender making those kale smoothies she used to love. But this time, the silence didn't feel suffocating. It felt peaceful. For the first time in months, maybe even years, I realized I wasn't carrying the weight of Sarah's ambitions, expectations, and manipulations anymore. The days that followed were oddly liberating. It was as if a storm had finally passed, leaving me with the space to rebuild. The house, now empty of Sarah's presence and all her expensive clutter, felt like it was truly mine for the first time. I started making small changes, rearranging furniture, painting the walls, planting new flowers in the garden. These weren't just physical changes. They were symbolic of the new chapter one was beginning. Work became my anchor. For years, I poured myself into my job without thinking much about it. But now, it felt like a lifeline. My coworkers, who had subtly avoided the topic of my personal life during the chaos, started inviting me out for drinks, cracking jokes, and treating me like I was part of the team again. I began to realize just how isolated I'd become during my marriage. Sarah's self-absorbed pursuit of perfection had slowly pushed me away from the people who truly mattered. Social media was another beast I had to tackle. Sarah's posts, her carefully curated facade of living her best life, were no longer a daily irritant. She'd gone radio silent after her empire crumbled, leaving me free to reclaim my own narrative. I debated deleting my accounts entirely, but instead, I decided to use them to reconnect with old friends, share photos of my newly redecorated house, and, for the first time in a long time, just be me. No filters, no pretense. Occasionally, I'd hear whispers about Sarah. Mutual friends would mention seeing her at a coffee shop, looking disheveled and worn out. Apparently, she tried to rebuild her social media following, but without the glitz and glamour she once flaunted, people weren't as interested. She'd burned too many bridges, alienated too many people, and now she was facing the reality of her choices. One day, I ran into a mutual acquaintance who couldn't resist giving me the latest update. She's staying with a friend now, they said, borrowing money from anyone who will listen to her sob story. I nodded politely but didn't ask for more details. Sarah's life wasn't my business anymore, and honestly, I didn't care to know the specifics. The only thing I cared about was moving forward. As the weeks turned into months, I began to find joy in the little things again. Cooking for one wasn't the lonely chore I'd once imagined. It became a therapeutic ritual. Watching a movie on Friday nights wasn't a compromise anymore. It was something I genuinely looked forward to. And weekends? They were mine to spend however I wanted, whether it was hiking a trail, fixing up the house, or just reading a book on the porch. I even started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners and conversations with women who were kind, grounded, and most importantly, drama-free. Each date reminded me that there were people out there who valued honesty and connection, not just appearances and social clout. It was refreshing, to say the least. One night, as I was sitting on the porch with a beer in hand, watching the sunset, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. Sarah's betrayal had been a brutal lesson, but it had also been a wake-up call. I'd spent so much time trying to support someone who didn't value me that I'd forgotten to value myself. Now, I was finally learning how to do that. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that life doesn't always go the way you plan. People you trust can let you down, and the things you think are permanent can crumble in an instant. But when the dust settles, you have a choice. Let the pain define you, or use it to rebuild something stronger. I chose the latter. And as I looked out at the horizon, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long time, the future felt like it was mine to shape. No Sarah, no drama. Just me, living my best life, one day at a time.